Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and kick things off. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by BSN Sports and founder of Ready, Set, Resilient, Dr. Ben Freakley. Today's content is titled Pause, Notice, Coach, using mindfulness to help coaches tap into the best versions of themselves. Before we dive in, I want to thank you all for being here today. We know as coaches, parents, educators, and athletes, you're all extremely busy, so we really appreciate it. With that being said, I'll go ahead and pass things off to Ben. Take it away.
Thanks, Saxton. It's so great to be on with the coaching community today. I am always grateful to have an opportunity to work with coaches and be around coaches. I'll get into this a little bit later, but I spent 15 years coaching college sports, coaching college soccer, and have spent the rest of the time in high performance environments. One thing I'd like to ask everybody to do, we're pretty fortunate today. We've got a relatively intimate group with 30 coaches on, and I'd love for this to be as participatory as we can make it. It's always a value of mine to engage coaches, just like my better years as a coach when I would engage players. So to that end, and to whatever level you're comfortable, I'd like to encourage people to be Fred Thomas and show your face on the screen if people are willing to do that today. And while we're opening up some screens and still settling in, Fred, I'll just go to you first. What motivated you to sign up for the webinar today? You can chat it in or come off mute and just tell the whole group. Kent, I got you loud and clear. Fred, you can type it in too if it's easier. Interesting topic. Always looking to increase the mindset, skill set. Gotcha. How about one more? Courtney, if you're willing to tell us what motivated you to sign up for the webinar today.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I coach female athletes and I have for a long time, and I think this is just an important topic to be able to continue educate myself, but also, help them grow into, young, confident players. Because I think the mental side of the game really prohibits them from performing their best sometimes.
Hmm. And us too, from coaching our best sometimes. I think everybody on this call I view as a performers. As a performer, I think coaches deserve their own routines to get into the best heart space and head space to do their job. And when we can do that on a regular basis, we can show up more fully for our athletes. This is a very passionate topic for me, one that I'm really excited to just start a conversation with today. I think if I had any goal, it would be one that you all would carry on having with your coaching colleagues, with your athletes, with friends, because I think this idea of how we can be more mindful in our roles has a lot of not only performance benefits, but also just well-being benefits as well. So with that being said, let's kind of dive in here. So my name is Dr. Ben Freakley. You guys can call me Ben. This is my 25th year working as either a coach or as a mental performance coach, sports psych. I was a college athlete. I played college soccer and immediately went into coaching right away. It was the only thing that I knew that I wanted to do. Um, and along the way, there's been some pivots, but just over to the side is a brief snapshot of where I've spent most of my time. So, first off, in college athletics as a college soccer coach, I was a Division I coach, head coach, and an assistant coach. And then when I made my first pivot, it was doing full-time performance psychology work with 75th Ranger Regiment. So I went to Special Operations Forces. I was way out of my league and learned way more from them than I could ever teach. But it was that first step, working full-time in training mindset and training mental skills. And then from there, I've spent 5 years working in Major League Baseball at all levels, from minor leagues up to major leagues. and working a lot with coaches as well, and you'll see why in a minute. And then more recently, working with Major League Soccer, and I've got some teams and players that I continue to work with. And my full-time job now is back with Special Operations Forces, but in my consulting role, do a lot of work in mental health, mental well-being, working with executives, and I have many private clients that are head coaches. Um, why is that? Because my philosophy as the CEO of Ready, Set, Resilient is that all of you coaches are already the sports psychologist for their teams, and I want to make you a great one. For those of you that are on camera, what do you think of that statement? Coaches are the sports psychologists of their team. Head nods, thumbs up, thumbs down. Fred's given. Yeah, Mark is in with that. Lauren is in with that. Yeah, you are. Hey, Jake, I'm seeing it too. So I think about this all the time. Back to my time when I was a head coach, yes, I was organizing practices, and planning and structure and organization was a big part of my job. But on a daily basis, I was also working with players on discipline and focus and motivation and commitment and confidence and how to really stay present and calm and performing under pressure. And these are things that you're working with your athletes on a daily basis. So, since I started my company, I really just love working with and through coaches to help them be the most competent sports psychologists so they can have even better conversations with their players around their mindset, their mental health, but also the team dynamics as well. And what really started this origin story out for me was that is a picture of Patch and Field at Virginia Military Institute. Anybody ever been to VMI before? People have heard of VMI. I was the head men's soccer coach at VMI, and this one game in particular, not this one, this is a more current picture, but the year was 2007. I kind of joke around this and say, so there I was. The year was 2007, and we were about to play Coastal Carolina, which to this day is a powerhouse in a lot of college sports, but specifically men's soccer. They were a very, very good program. And I, in particular, felt that this week we were 100% ready to beat Coastal Carolina. I just think back that if you think about how you prepare a team, technically, are the skills there? Tactically, do they understand the game plan? Physically, are they fit to perform? And mentally, are they in the right headspace? It was check, 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 check. Those are the big boxes that I always check myself on. And so we go into the game, and with 70 minutes in, we are winning at home. And I'm starting to think to myself, this is going to happen. Moments later, they score a goal. That game ends. I don't want anybody feeling sad for me with what I'm about to tell you. That game ends double overtime. We lose 3-2, and we had 6 yellow cards and 2 red cards. And we fell apart. Now, in the field of psychology, I didn't know what to call that day, and I won't use any of the language that I used with my team that day. It wouldn't be appropriate. But what had happened was when we started that game, we were performing out of a motivation to achieve success. And that's classified as aggressive behaviors, but not out of control. It's classified as a mindset that is task or mission focused as opposed to being outcome or results focused. And it's classified as a mindset that is in the present moment without any overthinking about what to do next. A lot of trust is associated with a motivation to achieve success. After we gave up that first goal, we switched immediately and started playing out of a motivation to avoid failure. Has anybody had their teams in that state before where we're playing not to lose? Is that ever? I'm seeing a couple head nods there. And that was the shift that occurred right there. We went from the motivation to achieve success to the motivation to avoid failure. We went from thinking about doing our jobs to thinking about winning and losing. We went from being about aggressive and some smart risk taking to being bullied by our emotions. And what's worse in all of this, the worst part that I still wrestle with to this day, is that if you would have looked over to the touchline, if you'd have looked over to the sideline at me during this time, you would have seen a coach that was highly dysregulated. You would have seen a coach with very rushed speech, a coach that was very reactive to the emotions that I was feeling on my own. I was being dominated by negative thoughts. What if we lose this game? What if we absolutely screw ourselves? And instead of being in the present moment and seeing where my players under pressure could look over to their coach and see poise. They could look over to their coach and see calm. None of those things happened that day. That is what has led me from going from being a sport coach to being more of a performance psych coach. And I left there determined to learn about the psychology of performance, the psychology of team dynamics, the psychology of coaching. And I just go back to that day in my mind so many times saying, what would have happened if I would have been able to pause and notice and then really choose, or in today's title, coach what was right in front of me. Not what I was worried about happening, but what was actually happening. And over the years, what I've come to study and practice more is mindfulness. But I wanted to ask really quick as we're getting into this here. I wrote down this word, the coach's life, and I want you to put into the chat now, what are some of the daily stressors, opportunities, when you think about the things associated with the coach's life that could elevate pressure, that could take you off of your A game, what comes to mind? Fred's already cooking in the chat. I love this. Time, family, team conflict, attitudes, admin, parents, all caps, administration, all caps. Yeah, athletes not taking advantage, exhaustion, academics, the drive to want to do more. These are great. These are great. We could probably fill up this entire session today, just talking about what it's like to be you. And the point that I want to make in all of this is, when I go back to that day at VMI when we shifted and we lost that game, I would say that most of my threats to being at my best were internal. We've listed some external threats today. We talked about parents and admin, player attitudes that can be external distractions. If you don't hear anything else that I talked to you about today, this idea of pause, notice, choose is really developing up our own internal awareness. What is going on in my mind? What emotions am I feeling right now? And what is the relationship between my thoughts, my feelings, and my coaching behaviors that my players are about to experience next? When I worked in pro baseball, we would often offer this quote to our players: when there is no enemy within, the enemies on the outside can do us no harm. When there is no enemy within, the enemies on the outside can do us no harm. That day at VMI, myself, my players, we were all being dominated by thoughts about the future. We were all being dominated by fear and worry and anxiety. And these are all natural emotions that occur in the coach's journey. They are natural emotions that occur in the player's journey, but we do not have to be dominated by those things. We do not. I'm just going to check the chat real quick. I see some people are chiming in still. Oh yeah, Lauren, it's the quote is when there is no enemy within, the enemies on the outside can do us no harm. This is really this quote of mastery over self, self-control. So everybody knows who that is in the photo. If you don't, please drop off you're kicked out of the Zoom. And I'll talk to you later. That's Phil Jackson, and I love to reference Phil Jackson anytime I'm talking about mindful approaches to sports. So I like to use the formal quote of what mindfulness is, offered by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. So John Kabat-Zinn is the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction. When I started my mindfulness journey 8 years ago, it was all rooted in John Kabat-Zinn's work. This guy is a legend in the field of psychology, a legend in the field of mindfulness. He's taken people truly in some of the worst suffering imaginable, terminal cancer, and has helped them live with equanimity and peace. And he offers this definition of mindfulness, which is, I'll be a little bit lengthier with it, but it's paying attention on purpose with moment to moment awareness, non-judgmentally. If I were working with any of you right now and I'd say, hey, what are the mental qualities that you expect of your athletes? I guarantee you would tell me things like, Ben, I want them to focus. Ben, I want them to pay attention. Like the ability, I think about this, and I've been working with professional athletes for close to 10 years now. And I've learned that elite performers know how to regulate, they self-regulate their attention and their emotion under pressure. Back to that VMI story, I couldn't do it that day. Under pressure, my attention went to the future. I gave it away. And then under pressure, I was bullied by the emotions of fear and loss and worry. So this mindfulness is the practice of paying attention on purpose with moment to moment awareness, non-judgmentally. Attention is a choice, and it's also a limited resource. And so we as coaches have to get really, really, really good at noticing what really deserves my attention. If I've got the parent requests coming in, the admin requests coming in, a practice to be planned, a player to talk to, film to watch, those are all different experiences if we're only bringing fractions of ourself to that moment. When we bring our full self to that parent interaction, it hits different. When we bring our full self to watching that film, we see something different. When we bring our full self to planning that practice, then we get more depth and more layer and more intentionality out of it. So what are the three ways that we develop this mindful approach? One, it is about setting an intention to cultivate awareness and coming back to it again and again and again. When I go into this practice today, what do I want to be aware of? There's a great book called Peak by Anders Ericsson. Anybody ever heard of this book before? It's maybe 10, 15 years old now. And I had the opportunity to meet Anders Ericsson when he was still alive. He came in and did some work with us when I was with the Toronto Blue Jays. And we were sitting and we were watching a practice, and he talked to me about this concept of a quiet eye. And I hadn't heard that before. And I was like, could you just explain that to me a little bit more? And he said, yeah, look out at this practice right now. You have those players over there that are hitting, and you have those players over there that are pitching, and you have those players over there that are taking infield practice, and you have those players over there that are warming up, and you have those coaches doing that. He said, you can't be truly observing everything at the same time. So where do you want to quiet your eye? Do you want to quiet your eye and only observe the pitcher that's pitching? Do you want to quiet your eye and only observe that hitter that's hitting? And it was a very profound moment for me. And I just started practicing that out. I'd say, okay, for the next 30 seconds, I'm only gonna, I know there's all these things going on, but I'm only gonna give my attention over to these players. And I noticed in doing that I was quickly starting to get data, subjective and even objective, to be able to go to a player and say, hey, I noticed when you were hitting, you did more of this. Hey, I noticed when you were throwing, you did more of this. And I was able to give greater, richer detail in my reflections and observations because I had an intention. My intention was to quiet my eye. The next is attention to what's occurring in the present moment. And you see there, it's to simply observe thoughts and feelings and sensations as they arise. And this is a big one here, that I tell people all the time, and I did not know it that day back at VMI. We need to treat our thoughts like clouds in the sky. Clouds in the sky are temporary. Sometimes they are fluffy and white and beautiful, and sometimes they are dark and they are stormy, but they all move in and they all move out. And I have made it a practice of reminding my clients that thoughts aren't facts. I go back to that day at VMI and I was dominated by that thought that we're going to lose this game. And then the body hears everything the mind says. So my heart started racing more, and my muscles got more tense, and my mind continued to race. And if I'd been a more mindful coach, pause, notice coach, I could have paused. I could have noticed I'm having the thought that we're going to lose this game. It's not a fact. And I could have brought my attention back to, what's my striker doing right now that I like or don't like? What are my midfielders doing right now? I could have gotten outside of my head and more into the game. And then it's developing this attitude that's more curious than judgmental, and it's also compassionate and kind toward ourselves. So why another Phil Jackson photo here? If you have not read the book 11 Rings, I highly recommend this. There is a whole chapter and part of the book where I'm just going to characterize it, that Phil Jackson he recognizes very quickly that he lacks the ability to self-regulate. And he mentions certain moments in games in particular where he would let the momentum of another team start to speed him up as a coach, and he would call timeouts when he didn't need to call timeouts, and he would get highly dysregulated. So what did he do about it? He started wearing a heart rate monitor during games because he wanted to get real-time feedback on, oh man, I'm at 80 beats per minute. I'm at 90 beats per minute. And I'm excited, but I don't have to let this excitement lead to behaviors like calling an irrational timeout. And what that led to was allowing his players to play through more difficult parts in the game, start to solve problems on their own, and to call timeouts with intention and to respond based on what he was actually seeing, instead of these reactive, impulsive timeouts where he was just trying to get some control back in the game. So there are three, and in a minute, I'll just kind of preface this. It is impossible to have a education session or a workshop like this and talk about mindfulness without practicing mindfulness. I tell my clients all the time, I do mindfulness with people, not to people. And I also have learned in doing this that this idea of being present, this idea of acceptance in life, this idea of letting go of thoughts, everybody understands these, but understanding is the second place prize. The first place prize is to actually live it. So we're going to have an opportunity not only just to talk mindfulness like we've been doing today, but we're going to have an opportunity here in a second just to do it. So there are three key components before we do this exercise that I just like to touch on briefly. The first is a beginner's mind. And there, I should have even asked earlier, there may be people on the call today that already practice mindfulness, and this is something that you do regularly. So by all means, when we get to kind of Q&A at the end, I'd love to get your thoughts and questions and comments on how you practice this. So the first pillar is having a beginner's mind. And what is that? You think about any time you've been a beginner, you go in with more curiosity. I love the quote, in the beginner's mind, there are many options. In the experts, there are few. So when we go into this exercise, it's about curiosity and it's about openness. And the brain may tempt you with thoughts of, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? And it's important just to notice and accept that that's part of doing something new. The second is acceptance. And where we get into trouble is with avoidance. When we have negative thoughts and we have negative feelings and when we have negative reminders of the past, instead of trying to push those away, it's accepting that, hey, as a coach and for what I do, sometimes I'm going to experience losing. Sometimes I'm going to experience the fear of losing. These all come with the experience. When I worked with the Army Rangers, the first stanza of the Ranger Creed said, recognizing that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. And all of you know the hazards of your chosen profession. There's doubt, there's frustration, there's loss, there's conflict, there's team dynamics. This is about practicing that all of these things come with the territory, as opposed to trying to avoid when those things pop up. And then the third is developing awareness, awareness of our attention, awareness of our emotion, awareness of our environment, what's going on externally, what's going on internally. So if anybody wants to go deeper in this, there are actually 10 attitudinal foundations of mindfulness, but we'd be here all day if we tried to go deep into all of them. So I'm just encouraging people to keep up their own self-study with that. So I'll actually go back. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to invite everybody now is, and this is where I'd say, if you're on screen, you can now black out your screen if you'd like, because I'm going to guide everybody through a mindfulness session now. So unless you're driving, if you're driving, keep your eyes open, please keep your eyes open. So again, just back to that mindfulness definition, we are about to practice paying attention on purpose with moment to moment awareness, non-judgmentally. So for starters, I will invite everybody to get into a relaxed position. You can rest the hands on the armrests. You can cross the arms. The more awareness we pay to the body, the better. Starting out, just noticing the body being supported by the chair, and also giving yourself permission to either close the eyes or just lower and soften your gaze. This is about you as a coach. This is about you as a performer. Thinking about what you want to get out of this exercise. And you might even silently say to yourself in your mind, I give myself permission to relax. I give myself permission to be present. And just quickly do a scan of the body, noticing the top of the head, the temples, the shoulders, the traps, all the areas we carry stress. And just notice what the body's feeling in this moment. No need to change or judge anything. And also pay attention to any sounds that you're hearing in this present moment. including the sound of your own breath. And you can start to turn the focus of this exercise onto your breathing. Inhale, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Exhale, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And really giving yourself permission to go for it. Starting to be intentional. Slowing down the breath, breathing from the belly. If you like, you can inhale for a count of 3. Exhale for a count of 5. And you can pay attention to what it sounds like to breathe in and what it sounds like to breathe out. And when you pay close attention, you'll notice there is a difference between those sounds. A difference in the sound of the inhale, a difference in the sound of the exhale. Maybe a distraction pops up from time to time. That's totally normal. If it does, you can choose to follow the distraction or bring the attention back to the breath. Inhale, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Exhale, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And as we get ready to conclude this exercise, I invite you to take just one more moment and reflect on why you coach, why you do it, why you show up. And maybe even think about what it would be like to show up more fully, more present, bringing all of yourself to any situation that you show up in as a coach. And then slowly start to wiggle the fingers and the toes to put some movement back in the body. And then gently roll your neck and your shoulders as long as it doesn't cause any discomfort. And do a quick inventory, noticing any changes that have occurred in the body or mind during that exercise. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I would invite anybody that's willing to put in the chat what they thought of that exercise. We'll see if we can get some comments going. I liked it. Felt kind of cool. Glass of water. Thank you, Courtney. Hard as a coach to silence your brain with a million things. Yeah. Oh, I love it, Paul. Yeah. Giving myself permission. Short mental break. Don't normally get to do. Forgot how useful it can be. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Delaney. Yeah, good. Thanks for the feedback. Be more present. Thank you, Mark. Good. I appreciate the comments in there. And, just zooming out on what we did, we took just a couple minutes. We connected to the breath. We acknowledge that, and I'd say this in a lot of my practices, distractions don't ruin the experience, they're part of it. And I also want to qualify this. Mindfulness is not about quieting the mind. It's about noticing the mind and accepting that sometimes the mind will be very loud and other times it will be quiet. We still have a choice on where we put our attention. We have a choice. Same thing we tell our players when they react poorly to a teammate's mistake, when they react poorly to a referee decision. Attention is always a choice. So as we get ready to close up here, I just think, okay, what does it mean to pause, notice, coach? What does it mean? I'm thinking about moments in the game where you're really feeling that dynamic between the pressure performance relationship. The heart is beating faster. Maybe the score line is a lot closer, or maybe it's lopsided in the wrong direction. When I say pause, what I mean is giving yourself that mental moment to ask yourself, what deserves my attention? Then the noticing, where is my mind? Am I on that last mistake? Am I dwelling on something that happened? Or has my mind raced off into the future and I'm thinking about outcomes and results and the end of the game or the end of the match or the end of the inning instead of bringing my attention right back to where my feet are? And then coach is whatever our behavior needs to be in that moment. Who do I need to coach? What do I need to coach? Where do I need to coach? What do I need to be intentional with in this moment now that I've noticed that my mind was off in the future? How do I bring that back and be intentional with my coach behaviors? I had to use this photo. Who can tell me why? The eye of the storm. You got it, Fred. The eye of the storm is known, and yes, you got it, Delaney. The eye of the storm is known as that calm center. The air quality, the air temperature inside the eye of a storm is lower than the storm itself, which creates higher visibility and higher clarity. That's what we want as coaches. When we find ourselves getting dysregulated, when we find ourselves being distracted by the noise, we have a choice to either be the storm or the center of the storm. And I love the phrase, calm is contagious. You've probably all heard that phrase before, calm is contagious. But when these are high stakes environments, when the pressure's on, when the expectations are there, and your players look over to you, what do you want them to see? Not what they saw on me that day at VMI. I know none of us want that. And how we can get more presence, how we can get more poise and composure is by using some of these strategies that we've talked about today to help regulate our attention and our emotion. And I will pause there for any questions. Thank you, Delaney.
Awesome. Well, we will give people another minute or two to type in their questions. I see Fred typing away. See some other people working on it. Awesome. Mark just asked, you use the phrase heart space at the beginning. Could you explain?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm referencing there just the capacity for more acceptance and making room for all of the emotions that are part of the human experience, developing more compassion toward ourselves. I think back to my days as a coach where I was just highly critical and didn't give myself much grace. And I use heart space to describe, just like we want that mental space and head space so we can have that room to think, that heart space is that room to feel all the emotions, practicing the acceptance and the compassion.
Great. The questions are really coming in now. Sydney asked, how do you keep from reacting negatively during an exciting and emotional game? Seems like you might have experience with that one, Ben.
Yeah, so again, pain has been my best teacher in this. So I've had many, many failures along the way. I think the key is that we practice what we did today long before we need it. If in these highly reactive moments, it'd be no different than putting a player in to a game with no skills, no practice, no training, and expecting them to perform in a high pressure situation. So the reason that it is called as a mindfulness practice is they have done fMRI brain scans looking at people who practice mindfulness and those that don't, and you can observe the shrinking of the amygdala. So what I'm saying is practice when you don't need it, and you'll be more likely to respond with pro-social, positive coaching behaviors, as opposed to expecting that in the moment you can just have that poise. Give yourself 5 minutes a day. Give yourself 2 minutes before practice. Practice when you don't need it.
Hector said, any suggestions for part-time coaches, full-time effort on being totally present for training and matches?
I go back to the quiet eye. What am I looking for today? Which player or players can I really focus my efforts with? I think it's setting an intention and a reminder to be present, and maybe even making a list beforehand of what could distract me and take me off my A game. But I just think it's that constant reminder to bring yourself back fully to the present moment and quieting your eye on the things that you think are going to matter in that training session. This to me even changes like where we stand when we coach. We see different things from different vantage points when we stand here versus there.
Awesome. James said, during a timeout, what kind of speaking can be used to your team?
Oh, I love this question. Can during a timeout, what kind of speaking?
Yes, what kind of speaking can be used to your team?
How long is a timeout?
See if James can pop in some more. Let's go with maybe like 3 minutes.
3 minutes in a timeout. If I had 3 minutes in a timeout, I'd want to ask my players, where's your mind right now? I'd want to know if it was on that last play, if it's on the next play. I might ask my players, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fully in the moment, how present are you right now? If any of you have read the book Legacy about the New Zealand All Blacks, they talk about this concept of keeping a blue head. A red head is highly reactive, emotion driven, mostly behaviors that hurt the team. A blue head is calm, it's confident, it's supporting teammates. So if we could come up with some uh, kind of cultural norm language as a team and share that with the team, then we can use those short, punchy cues and reminders during timeouts to bring everybody back in, so to speak.
All right. And Ben, how does your answer change if we were talking about 90-second timeout and then a 30-second timeout?
Oh man, that's so good. Again, like the present check. Where are you? Past, present, or future? I can do that in 5 seconds. Where are you? Are you on the last play, this play, or the next play? And answer, hey, in the next 5 minutes, in the next 1 minute, what deserves your attention? Oh, this play. Oh, guarding that person. Oh, running this play. Like really help ask questions that guide focus and attention.
Right. One question, I think they mean out of focus, but what are some techniques for those athletes that are out of focus and get too tense to compete?
There are things that you can do before games. We can do, and you can look all these up. You can do progressive muscle relaxation. Um, we can do something called passive muscle relaxation. These things can really help relax the body in particular. Mindfulness, like we just did, calling it pause, notice, choose. And uh, we could do a whole nother session on breathing properly, but here goes a hot take. Um, do not tell your players to take deep breaths. Do not do that. Normally, that leads to over breathing, and players, when they haven't had training, or all of us in general, will breathe from our chest, which often leads to short, shallow, and irregular breathing, which can promote hyperventilation. We want to use the term low and slow. Low meaning we're going to breathe from our belly. Slow meaning we're going to have a longer exhale than we do inhale. And when we do that, we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is dominant. I'm getting too science here. Nerd alert. I will nerd out, people. You asked the question. Um, it'll activate our vagal nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve. It innervates most of the organs in our body. So when we breathe low and slow, we get into more of a rest and digest. Um, let's not say things like calm down, because when you're really pissed off and somebody tells you to calm down, how often have you said, oh, you're right, I'll just let that go. Thank you. It'll actually just spike the anger and the anxiety. So we need to do more of affirming, hey, you're really in your head right now. What's going to help? Let's slow it down. Let's slow the breath down. We can also set immediate goals. Immediate goals. What can you do in the next 5 minutes? Hey, what's going to help you have a great warm up? Now we're getting them to problem solve for themselves. Structure lessens anxiety. Get them thinking really short term, help them bring it back to the present moment.
Love that response. Fred asked, how do we get the team to follow me in the calm? Sometimes I'm calm, but it might not transfer to my kids.
Hmm. Maybe grateful first, Fred. I love that you're modeling it. That's everything, right? Like I wasn't modeling that day in my story. You're modeling this. This is huge. Maybe their calm isn't the same version of your calm. Maybe everybody could come up with their own calm cue. Um, and also, too, I learned this as a coach. Like not everybody performs at their best when they're calm. So you, as the one that needs to see the biggest picture, the strategy, the tactics, there's a different need for you to be calm. I'm sure you'd agree with me, we want them to have some bite and some urgency and some aggression. I think you're probably asking maybe when they're too aggressive or too amped up, how do we bring them down? And that might be where we get them to kind of create their own calm cues or reminders.
We are rolling through these. Courtney said, what do you think the correlation is between mindfulness and body language? Any ideas how to practice controlling our body language as a coach?
You know, the what I have observed in people is that when they are being more mindful and they are more aware and they are more accepting, you will see them taking deeper, slower breaths on their own without even having to tell them to slow down. A lot of times when I'm working with somebody, I'll see them go, and they'll realize they were overthinking something or they were letting go. Um, Outside of that, I think it's always a good idea for coaches to talk about what positive, affirming body language, what signals we want to send to our teammates. I think that's good. And also, almost to what Fred posed, like, I think it starts with the coach being mindful of what is their body language saying.
So looks like we have maybe two more questions. Jake said, with empathy, how do you develop empathy between athletes and families and also support?
This is another one where I wish I had a sports psych working with me when I was a coach. You develop it by uh, listening to understand versus listening to respond. When your players, when parents are talking to you, it's shutting off any need to have the answer and being a heart with ears, as one of my friends taught me. And if anything, it's asking yourself, what's it like to be in this person's shoes? If I were a parent coming to every game, my kid never ever played, and he's on the team and he's doing his best, what would I feel like as a parent? It's putting yourself in to understand the emotions and the emotions, the feelings, and the thinking of another. I think this is an elite skill of coaches. That ability to remember what it was like to be a player, that ability to remember what it was like to work your ass off and not get recognized. Um, the ability to know what it's like to have all the pressure in the world on you, and maybe a set of parents that has high expectations and talks about winning all the time. Yeah, that's a game-changing skill to develop that one.
I think this is a great one to end on. And then, Ben, if you want to throw up any of your contact information while we round out. The last question was, with younger athletes who may lack the emotional maturity to accept these techniques, how do I, as a coach, get them to a better space?
By looking at them as people, and athletes are only a part of who they are. I work with a lot of college programs as well. And one of the head coaches of a program I worked with, we set a goal that he had so many assistant coaches that could do the sports side of the work that by the end of preseason, his goal was to have had multiple check-ins with every single player on the team. And if the sports side of their life was brought up, it would have been by the player and not the coach. Just show up for them. Be the role model that you needed. Check in on their life, joke with them, just see them as a person that is also a performer, but always a person first.